Imagine you have a magic box where you can store anything, a number, a word, even a list of your friends' names, and call it by any name you want. Sounds cool, right? In Python, these magic boxes are called variables, and today I'm going to show you how to use them. Let's get straight into the video. Variables are like containers that store data values. So now, how do we create variables? So there is no command to create variables. Rather, what we need to do is give a name to our variable. So say age. Now age will become our variable. So age equals, say, 100. Age equals 100. Now we've just created a variable. The variable is age, and we added a value to the variable. Let's create another variable. Name equals Mark. So now we've just created two variables. So now let's actually run the code and print the age and the name. So print age. Now let's do print name. Now if we run the code, as you guys can see, 100 and Mark. So what we did here is first assigning values to our variables. So here we created variables, and here we told Python to print the variable age. And as we know, the value of age was 100. And then we told Python to print the variable name, and we set the variable name as Mark. Another thing to keep in mind about variables is that Python automatically assigns the type to a variable. Now, what is a type? I'm gonna be mentioning two of the many types. The first one is an integer. Now, integers are whole numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 100, 1,000 are all integers. Even 500, 500,000, 200, 200,000. As long as it is a whole number, it is an integer. And strings are texts, so anything that's inside quotation marks are considered strings. It could be letters, it could be words, it could be full sentences. These are all strings. So what this means is that we don't have to manually write integer like this. Rather, Python already knows that 100 is an integer, and the same applies to string. We don't need to add string at the beginning of Mark. Rather, Python does all of this automatically. Now, as I previously mentioned, when you create a variable, Python automatically assigns the type to the variable. But we could also manually set the type of a variable. So let's create the variable a equals 20. As of now, the variable a is an integer because 20 is a whole number, and as we mentioned, whole numbers are integers. Now to double check this, we could print the type of a, so type a. Now if we run the code, you can see that a is an integer. Now say I want to change the type of the variable a from an integer to a string. What we need to do is write string before the value. So now if we check the type of a, let's run the code. Now you can see that a is a string. Let's do another one, but before that, I'm gonna introduce you guys to a new type, and that type is called float. Now float is a type of variable that stores numbers with decimals. So this could be 1.0, 2.5, 3.7. These are all referred to as float in Python. So now let's do a new variable and assign the value 30 to it. And let's change the type to float, just like so. Now to check the type of the variable b, let's do print type b. That's it. Now let's run the code. As you guys can see, the type of b is float. Another thing about string variables is that you could either use double quotes or single quotes. So name equals Mark, is the same as name equals Mark. Now, as you guys can see, one of them has double quotes and the second one has single quotes. So you could use the one you like the most. Now, variable names are case sensitive. So that means that A with a lowercase, let's do equal Ben, is not the same as a uppercase A. So let's do this Mark. So to prove that the lowercase a is different to the uppercase A, we can print both of them. So print A and print A. So if we run the code, as you guys can see, lowercase a is Ben and uppercase A is Mark. Variable names do not have to be full words such as age or number or years. It could also just be letters. That's really up to you what you want to name your variable, but there are some rules for variable names. Now I just wrote some random values to the variables. And one thing to note about these variables is that they all start with letters. So A, N, X, A, B, Q. So they all start with letters. Just to prove that all of these variables are valid, let's print all of them. Now let's run the code. As you guys can see, all of them are valid. So from the rules of a variable name is that a variable name can never start with a number. So let's say 5 numbers equals, say 55. Now, as you can see, PyCharm already gives us an error right under the variable name. This is an invalid variable name. So if we try to print this, right, print 5 numbers and run the code, you're going to see that we get an error. Secondly, the variable name must either begin with an underscore or a letter. So for example, underscore age, let's say equals 22. Now this is a valid variable name. If we try to print this, print underscore age. Now if we run the code, you can see that we don't get any errors. And let's make a variable name where we start the variable name with a letter. So for example, ages equals 53. Now if we print ages, right, run the code, you guys can see that we don't get any error because ages is a valid variable name. Thirdly, variable names can only contain the letters from A to Z, the numbers from 0 to 9, and only a underscore from the symbols. So a variable name like this one will be invalid. You guys can see that PyCharm gives us an error because this is a invalid variable name. Fourthly, a variable name cannot be named after a Python keyword. Python keyword are keywords such as if, else if, or, and. These are all Python keywords. Now let's say we try to create a variable called if. You'll see that we get an error. The red line under the code tells us that there is an error. And the last variable name rule is one that we mentioned previously. And that is that variable names are case sensitive. So this means that the variable name age in all lowercase, let's add a value, is not the same as age that begins with an uppercase A, let's say 19. And maybe age in all uppercase, let's do equal 20. So I'm going to print all of these 3 different variables. Print age all in lowercase. Print age with the uppercase A. And then print age all in uppercase. Now if we run this code, as you guys can see, even though all of these 3 variables say age, all of them hold different values. And the difference between them is that some of these variables are uppercase and some are lowercase. So keep that in mind. So here are some examples of valid variable names. And you guys can see that I've used a mix of uppercase letters lowercase letters, underscore, and also some numbers. Variable names that contains a few words in the name can be hard to read or remember. For example, my first name. This is very hard to read and remember. Now I'll show you guys 3 techniques to make variable names more readable. The first one is called Pascal case, and the rule in Pascal case is that every word begins with an uppercase. So my first name equals Ben. So uppercase, uppercase, uppercase. Secondly, we have camel case. Now, in camel case, all the words begin with a capital letter, except the first one. So it will look something like this. My first name equals Ben. So as you guys can see, my is with a lowercase m, first with an uppercase F, and name with an uppercase N. The third technique is called snake case. So the rule for snake case is that there is an underscore between every word. So my underscore first underscore name equals Ben. As you guys can see, all the words are separated by underscores. Another thing to note is that we can assign values to multiple variables all in one line. So let's say we create 3 variables, right? A, B, and C. So say A is chicken, and then B is fish, and C is sushi. Now what we did is that we assigned the string chicken to the variable A, and then we assigned the string fish to the variable B. And likewise, we assigned the string sushi to the variable C. So now let's see if A prints out, or it prints out chicken, fish, and sushi. Let's run the code. As you guys can see, it only printed chicken. Now if we add B, close the parentheses, run the code, you're gonna see that it printed chicken and fish. And if we do A, B, and C and run the code, we're gonna get chicken, fish, and sushi. Or alternatively, you could remove the A and just keep B and C. And if you run the code, that's also completely valid. Fish and sushi. So now let's talk about assigning multiple variables to one value. So say my first name, my middle name, and my last name is Ben. So what I can do, instead of manually writing all of this in 3 lines, we could summarize it and write it in only 1 line. So let's delete these 2 and then do first name equals middle name equals last name equals Ben. So what we did here is that we told Python that the first name, the middle name, and the last name all equals to the string Ben. So if we print, say, first name, we're gonna get Ben. And if we print the middle name and the last name, we're gonna get Ben thrice. That's another cool Python life hack to keep in mind. Now let's go through unpacking collections. Now what does that mean? Let's say we have a list or a tuple, and let's say I only want to use 1 value inside of a list, or let's say I want to use 3 values inside of a tuple. So what we can do is we can manually take out 1 value, or we can print a value from a tuple based on where in the tuple it's located. But before that, let's explain what a list is. So a list is a collection of items stored inside square brackets. So as you guys can see, we have the list name, and then we have the values that are stored inside of the list. And the tuple is similar to the list, but one of the differences is that when you create a tuple, the values of tuples are stored inside of parentheses, just as so. And another difference is that lists are mutable. What does that mean? That means that if you later on want to add a value to the list, you can do so. But that's not the case with tuples, because tuples are immutable, which means that if you later on want to add a value to the tuple, you cannot do so. Now I've created a list called colors, And I've added the values red, green, and blue to this list. And additionally, I've linked these values to variables. So the value red is assigned to the variable A, the value green is assigned to the variable B, and the value blue is assigned to the variable C. To do this, you write variables and you separate them by commas, and then you do equal and then the name of the list. So for example, let's say I want to print only red from this list. I don't want to print out green or blue. So what we can do is print A, just as so. And if we run this code, you're going to see that it only prints red. Or let's say we want to print out only green and blue. What we can do is print B and C. And if we print this code, we're gonna get green and blue. Now we can do the same with tuples. In tuples, values have numbers based on where they're located. So the first value is number 0, and the second value is number 1, and the third value is number 2, etc. So to print, for example, Washington, which is the first value inside of the tuple, we need to do print, then the name of the tuple, and then number 0 inside of square brackets. Now let's run this code, and we're gonna get Washington. And likewise, let's say we want to print the second value, then we have to write 1. Let's run this code, and we're gonna get London. We've covered the most important things about variables. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe for future videos. Thanks for watching.